Go ahead.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Anthony Picco, and we're doing a little chat today, but getting a handle on challenging charts. And by challenging, I mean like the kind of chart when you look at it, you go like, oh, what's that about? Because a lot of people volunteer charts, and I appreciate that. A lot of them, I'll be honest, were just involved charts. They weren't really challenging. So I just want to say there's a lot of sissies out there, and I'm just teasing. I have a challenging chart myself, not as difficult. I'm really looking for the ones that make you go, oh my God. And I have 5 of them. A few are going in depth, but we're going to see how to look at them and then looking for the way out, the solution. So this first chart is, um, this is a chart that somebody gave me, a friend of mine who's a astrologer, but she's very new at it. Said, help, I need help with this chart. I don't know what to do. And I said, send me the chart. And this is what I had. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, this is a challenge. And right off the bat, we're not seeing a lot of aspects. That's one of the things I find a key component in a lot of the really hard charts is either a ton of aspects or hardly any aspects. I find hardly any aspects a little more of a challenge because you haven't got a lot to deal with. And to be perfectly honest, people with something like this, chart like this, are kind of driven in some way because it's not like they have a lot of options. It's like there's your trine, there's your square, boom, that's all you got. So let's take this one apart quickly. The first thing I did, I point out, I noticed Sun conjunct Pluto, conjunct the nadir, conjunct the North Node, and even kind of squeezing in Mars over there. That's a pretty intense bundle. Most of it is in Scorpio. And that usually implies a certain kind of desire for power, a charismatic person, a powerful person. And it's at the nadir of who she is. I do know it's a woman. And so I find that kind of intense. And yet, as intense as that is, the next bundle to the left is Jupiter and Mercury and Venus all kind of rolling together in Scorpio. And regardless of how intense and dominating she might be, she's got enough qualities in that second circle to charm the pants off of anybody. She, when Venus is conjunct with Mercury, even in Scorpio, it gives you a silver tongue. And Jupiter is just ramping the whole thing up. She's got Virgo rising, so she's probably quite capable of handling herself in public. So, so where do the problems come up? And here we go. We'll start with this. This isn't so much a problem, but she's got Jupiter trining Saturn, and that's a positive thing. So still we have something positive here. Jupiter trining Saturn usually implies careful growth, measured growth. Jupiter keeps Saturn from being a stick in the mud. Saturn keeps Jupiter from going too crazy. So gradual progress. So we have this intense person who can be very charming, who will make gradual progress, excuse me. And the next thing, and this is what upset me a bit, was she's got, by the way, the colors don't mean anything. I just picked whatever I was working with. Saturn is squaring Pluto and Saturn. And this really increases the drive for power, but it throws a little kicker in there. Saturn square Pluto usually implies somebody who wants the power without the responsibility. They struggle to accept the responsibility. And this is a person who wants power, period. And so I'm kind of concerned this could be kind of a ruthless person. And Mars isn't actually clearly connected to everything. So this anger or power she has is not really got a clear connection. And so my biggest concern is, what is she going to do with this power? But herein lies kind of the solution. Let me just pop to the next chart. Make sure I got the next one. Okay. Oops, excuse me. Let me go back. Sorry. The issue with Saturn square Pluto is that Saturn never lets you have anything before you're ready. And whereas maybe early on in her life, and she's still pretty young, she hasn't even gotten to her Saturn return yet. She's around 27, I think. uh, Saturn's not going to let you have it before you're ready. So if she does try to seize power without moving forward and being responsible for it, it's really not going to work particularly well. Saturn is constantly asking her, and she should be asking herself, what do you want the power for? What are your goals? Where are you going with this? And this is sort of tied in too with what she's got at the nadir of her chart. Pluto and the North Node and even the Sun are all the way at the bottom of the chart. Pluto in the nadir suggests you need to transform your inner self throughout your life. There's even the North Node down there. It's in Sag, but it's still saying, go deep inside yourself, find out what it is you want to do. And this is important. Everything is below the surface. So this incredible power drive is kind of hidden, but she's going to go out in public. You can't have power sitting at home. So my biggest concern is how is she going to find, how is she going to figure out what her goal is? And if she was my client, I would say you've really got to examine what you want the power for, where you're going with it. Now, this is a kind of chart, and by the way, I don't know much about this woman. I do know that she is very politically conservative, very controlling, and it fits in the chart. You know, that Pluto and Sun conjunction makes a lot of sense in terms of trying to be very controlling. But the Saturn square, she doesn't do it right. Saturn's in her 6th house of her workplace. It could all come crashing down. Now, what I see hopeful in this chart is she's got a couple of transits coming up. One, she's got her Saturn return, which hasn't hit yet. It's going to be in there in about a year. And Uranus at this point, right now, today is at 7, almost 8 degrees. Uranus is opposite her Venus. Over the past year or so, it's been dancing on her Mercury and her Venus in opposition. By about another year or so, it's going to be opposite that Sun-Pluto conjunction, probably shortly after her Saturn return. I'm looking at this and saying, I sure hope this wakes her up and makes her pay more attention. Saturn, when it gets the Saturn return, is going to fire up that Saturn square Pluto, while Uranus is kind of upsetting and churning the Venus on the other side of the chart. So other people are going to be her downfall if she doesn't acknowledge them and recognize them and deal with them and deal with her power in that sense. So a very driven person, not a lot of options. The thing that I always would tell her is simply that you've got to find out why you want the power and what you're going to do with it, because otherwise it's simply not gonna work. So the next chart is one that I got from a volunteer. And once again, we have some really strong aspects and a bunch of, and nothing else. You know, there's not a lot of aspects. So when I start getting into this chart, the things that stand out, okay, first thing I noticed is that opposition. That's a strong opposition. Sun conjunct Mercury, very nice. It's opposite Saturn. And although Sun and Mercury are kind of far apart, Saturn's kind of drawing them together by being in sort of the opposite midpoint. And this is tough because Saturn oppositions to the Sun and Mercury will make you feel suppressed. It will make you feel like the outside world is trying to keep you in line. It may give you low self-esteem. It may give you a sense of self-suppression, silence, pulling back, not really feeling you're worthy. And so I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, let's see what else we have going. And I go, oh, well, how about the moon? Well, great. The moon's in Virgo, conjunct Mars. A moon in Virgo is not going to pat you on the back and tell you how wonderful you are. As a matter of fact, it's going to do the reverse, because the moon in Virgo will always judge its own emotions and see how it feels about them. So again, she's not going to have inner support from herself. So then I say, well, let's look at the rising sign, and Lord Almighty, it's Capricorn rising. So once again, there's this kind of stifled quality up front, and the ruler of her ascendant is part of the opposition. So just looking at these pieces, I'm seeing somebody that's could be really shut down and really held in. I also want to point out that as held in and as difficult as Saturn opposite Mercury might be in terms of conversation and communication, Saturn is in her 3rd house of communication, as is her North Node. So there's kind of a goal in this life to learn how to communicate. But just looking at this stuff right off the bat, um, she dealt herself kind of a not a great hand. So what I look at instead, just one second, here we go. We got to, is that right? We got to grab onto, yeah, the sextiles. There we go. And the things that I see releasing her is all Neptunian stuff. So all the things that are holding her back are very left brain, very logical, very linear, Saturn opposition, a Virgo moon, Capricorn rising. And yet we look and we see a couple of wonderful things at the top of her chart. She's got Neptune conjunct Venus, and they're sextiling Jupiter and dragging in, sort of dragging in Uranus. Venus sextile Jupiter is almost as good as Venus trining Jupiter. It's really a blessed kind of a combination. Neptune conjunct the Venus suggests that she's quite capable of being empathetic and tuning into other people. So, and on top of it, the Sun and the Mercury are in what I consider one of Neptune's houses, the ninth house. So I'm looking at somebody that really, to help herself in the most responsible way, really needs to move in a Neptune dimension, learns to be more empathetic, maybe meditate more, maybe listen to what needs to be said, not talk herself out of it in a logical, linear way. Sextiles are a lot like trines, except you kind of got to kickstart them. You know, you kind of got to deliberately use them. So there's some work to be done here, but there's a nice combination between Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus and Neptune. And excuse me, my cat is sitting in my notebook. She also has the quincunx of Jupiter and Saturn, and this adds a little bit of a challenge because, again, the need is to be focused on herself and trust herself more. With Jupiter, quincunx, Saturn, they don't work that well together. Other people may make her feel responsible, or she feels responsible, Saturn, for helping them, but it's a quincunx, so it doesn't always come back to her. So the other thing I would definitely tell this person is you've got to start taking care of yourself first. It doesn't mean you're not going to be responsible to other people. Not with that Saturn position, you're going to be responsible. But as my accountant once told me, you have to pay yourself first. You know, when you get your check, before you pay your bills, you put something in the bank for yourself, and then you pay your bills. And I think that works very well spiritually and emotionally. You've got to take care of yourself first. And there's some wonderful stuff here. Meditation might help. Anything that's creative will give this person an opportunity to just be with herself for herself and not have to, and be aware of who people actually are. Whereas that quincunx may make them, you know, kind of try to take advantage of her. The Neptune, yes, I know Neptune conjunct Venus can make you delusional about people, but if you get more into meditation, it can make you clearly see them for who they are in an intuitive method. And again, as Sun and Mercury are in the ninth house, so the more she takes things in the ninth house direction, it'll come back down to that North Node in the third house. She does need to learn to communicate third house in Aries in a direct way, which she struggles with. You know, all of her stuff up in the ninth house, well, that's Sun and Mercury is actually where her North Node also is. So she should know how to get into that. The matter of coming forward and being direct is where there's a bit of a challenge for her. But again, a frustrating chart is even here in this chart, the moon and Mars aren't really even conjunct anything, clearly. So the moon is even not even completely easily connected to a chart, which again is always a struggle to try to pull an unaspected planet into the unit of all the planets. You know, it's still in her chart. It's not like she can't touch it, but it's not easily wired in, is the way of looking at it. Now the next chart, I believe somebody sent in their grandson's chart. And right off the bat, there's a lot of squares here and oppositions. And my first thought is I have to kind of pull this apart and look at it clearly. So I look at the first thing I see, and there's a grand cross. So, oh my God, grand cross. But grand crosses give you a lot of energy. Crosses and oppositions and squares actually give you more energy than a trine. So, but it doesn't necessarily automatically fire in a healthy way. So let's look at the planets involved. Uranus is squaring Saturn, is squaring the Sun, is squaring Mars. This can be quite a ball because you've got Mars, anger, and in a passionate sign like Scorpio, is squaring Uranus, which means it can be very abrupt and disrupting, and is squaring the Sun, which means this person may be somewhat confrontational in the way they live their lives. And it's opposite Saturn, so there's going to be this tug and back and forth of like wanting to beat the crap and just get everything done, and then do absolutely nothing and back off into ennui. And then you have the opposition of Uranus opposite the Sun, giving a lot of kind of a disruptive nature. However, if this person, as Isabel Hickey says, a more evolved person can turn squares into trines and oppositions into conjunctions. So let's look at this in a different way. If he can get Uranus and Saturn under control, instead of kicking against convention, this is a possibility when Saturn and Uranus work together, is that new ideas can be brought into practical usage. Saturn square the Sun can make you feel very suppressed. It can also make you feel very focused. Same thing with Saturn square Mars. It can make you combative. It can also make you decide to be very precise in how you do things. And then Mars squaring Uranus means that this person can come up with new ideas to get things done. So my first thought, just looking at this isn't as rough as I would have thought. I will keep in mind that the Mars is in Scorpio. So this person's only going to do things when they feel they absolutely really emotionally commit to it. So I go to the next thing and I see where some of the problems come up. We have a T-square. Now I want to point out this chart is 11:30 p.m. So as any astrologer, I look at that with one eyebrow raised. It could be not precise, but given 11:30, there's a T-square with Neptune on the midheaven opposite Mercury on the nadir, squaring Jupiter on the ascendant. And this is where more of the problem comes up. Yeah, the Grand Cross could be turned into something positive, but here you have somebody, Neptune opposite Mercury, who's going to have, on a positive level, very creative and intuitive thoughts. On another level, completely wild, inappropriate, irrational, and maybe even delusional thoughts. And it's squaring Jupiter. And when Jupiter squares into anything, it basically says, you go, boy. So it's kind of ramping that up. And Neptune in the midheaven does suggest that this person's place in the world may be difficult for them to ascertain. So this is a bit of a challenge. Yes, that Grand Cross can be dealt with, but first we have to find a way to make the Neptune and the Mercury and the Jupiter cooperate instead of, ramp each other up. And, Jupiter's conjunct the ascendant. It's going to be a jovial forward person, but I'm really concerned about the Neptune. And this is the kind of person I might very specifically say, stay away from drugs and alcohol. They are not your friends, because this is exactly the kind of a sign that could suggest someone who abuses drugs on some level, possibly, and alcohol. So let's look at some of the positive things in the chart, provided I can click this properly. 1 second. Hang in there, everybody. I do know what I'm doing. Okay. So we've got a trine from Jupiter to Venus. And this is interesting because the last couple of charts had Venus and Jupiter also involved. And this is going to potentially help. He may struggle with his inner thoughts, that T-square, and his inner fantasies, but he has a nice connection to other people. A Jupiter trine Venus is like a blessing. Everybody likes you. Things kind of flow well for you. And I'm also looking at his Pluto trining his North Node and Sun, which is certainly going to give him the opportunity to transform and be reborn throughout his life. Although Pluto's squaring Venus. So you may, when people are trying to help him and people are trying to communicate with him, he may give them hard times. He may not want to cooperate. He's already got a Mars in Scorpio, which really hates being told what to do and being interfered with. And on top of it, he's a Leo, and he may think that I know better than anybody else does. So this is something to be gotten through, but there's a possibility here. He's got the ability to transform, and if he can turn that Pluto squaring Venus into a more positive thing, other people can help him transform. This is somebody that really needs to look outside himself to find the solutions to this. A lot of energy in the chart and a lot of, I say delusional, but when that Neptune gets pulled into control, it can be very creative. He could have a very creative field. He could be an artist. He could be a musician. It could be a lot of interesting stuff based on what he has in his 10th house, because Uranus is up there too. So he's not going to have a run-of-the-mill career. So this is a guy that is not easily going to fit in to society. However, this is interesting because this is a chart where transits actually help a lot. But it does mean there's going to be growing pains as he goes along. So let's look at this right now. We have Saturn is on the verge of moving on top of his Uranus. So it's going to engage that Grand Cross. So Saturn is going to be on Uranus, opposite the Sun, square Saturn, square Mars. So this is going to try to bring some sort of control and structure to a little bit of the madness. At the same time, Uranus by transit over by the ascendant, you know, right now, as we mentioned with Uranus, it's at 8 degrees roughly Taurus. In the next year or so, it's going to be on his Saturn and kicking off the Grand Cross from a different direction. Saturn is going to be on Uranus, and then Uranus is going to be on Saturn. So he's really going to get a lot of emphasis of structure, like how weird can you be, and then what is your structure? And ideally, this could be a wonderful period of him of learning to get a handle on his both his freedom and his responsibilities. Also, Jupiter has just about right now also engaging the Grand Cross directly, because Jupiter is at 18 degrees Aquarius, Uranus is at 14 degrees Aquarius. So recently it was just kind of activating this. So I would not be surprised if this year he's been acting out a lot. I don't really know him at all, but this is really agitating a lot of stuff in his chart that he struggles with. And I will point out, even though Uranus is currently at 8 degrees, it was in the past year at about 5 or 4 degrees. So Uranus was also on his Jupiter and his ascendant a pinch earlier, kicking off that T-square. So I would think a year or two ago, he might have really been ramping up his disconnection with the physical world, let's put it that way. Because Neptune is going to be very strong with Uranus kind of kicking it off. And it's going to be crossing his ascendant, which is a year or so ago, which was asking him to change completely who he was and how he presents himself to the world. And this is young. I believe I covered it over, but I believe 1999 or 1998 is his birth year. So, and just look, Jupiter, he hasn't even had a Jupiter return. That's about in about 3 years, he's going to get his first Jupiter return, roughly, which is makes him 24. So it's about 21 right now. So this is a chart that if he stays focused, transits will help him master it. And, you know, along with, of course, that Venus trining Jupiter and the Sun trining Pluto. And once again, we have somebody here with the North Node in the 4th house. The deeper inside himself he goes to find what motivates him, will help him connect better with himself, because a lot of what he's got motivating him are not smooth flowing things. They're squares, and squares, you know, one of the analogies I actually like about squares is it's kind of like there's a garden hose and you turn it on and the hose starts whipping around the yard, and somebody has to grab it and steer it. And that's the way I kind of look at squares. There's a lot of power there, but you've got to hold on to it, because that hose whipping around the yard can break a window and water the plants at the same time. And that's kind of the way I look at squares. So that is his chart. And then we move into this one. This person's a Sagittarian. I didn't cross out the date, but forgive me. There's a lot of red lines here. There's a lot of challenges going on here. So let's see if we can isolate what these challenges are, because that's how we start discovering um, how to help a person. Okay. Okay, the first T-square we're going to look at is Venus conjunct Neptune, Saturn conjunct the moon, and then Mars in Leo is completing the T-square. And once again, we have another person with Venus conjunct Neptune in these charts. So once again, it's curious to see that can be a challenge for people, provided if they don't master it and they don't bring it into an alignment and an enlightenment, you can be very delusional about other people. And in this particular chart, I'm looking at, we've got the sun in the 10th house. So there's a certain kind of sublimated quality to the person's personality, although she does have her rising sign in the same sign as her sun, which helps a bit. But then if you go to her moon to try to feel something, it's conjunct Saturn. And so it's wide, but it's there, and it's suppressing and restricting feelings. And yet at the same time, she processes her feelings in an analytical kind of air way. So there's not a lot of emotional kind of flow to it. And on the other side of the chart, we have Mars in Leo. So Mars opposite Saturn, which is kind of wide, but we're going to drag them together because it's opposite the moon, and the moon is kind of pulling in Saturn. You've got anger emotions. She may feel she has to defend her emotions, and yet her emotions may feel very restricted to her. She may feel, Saturn conjunct the moon can almost be like a Capricorn moon or even a Virgo moon, where a person denies their feelings. So let's see what else is going on in this chart. There's the other T-square. And you've got Jupiter opposite Uranus and squaring the sun and Mercury. So once again, you're struggling with speaking and crazy thoughts. You've got this kind of Sagittarius Mercury conjunct the sun. It's very open-minded, even if it's in the 12th house, but it's being like revved up by Uranus and Jupiter, which in its own way, some of these are similar to the problems with that kid with the Grand Cross. There's a kind of revving up of, well, let's say disruptive energies. Uranus doesn't have to be disruptive. This person will definitely be an original thinker, but because they're squares and oppositions, the originality may come out in a somewhat abrasive way at times. And one of the things, whenever I see a strong Uranus, I will say that there's always a certain kind of genius quality about a strong Uranus. And the problem with being a genius is that, it's not that they're super intelligent, but they think in different patterns. And, one of the analogies I often use is people go around going like 1 + 1 = 2. Yes, 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, we all agree 1 + 1 = 2. And then the genius comes along and says 2 - 1 = 1. And everybody goes, oh, we never thought of that before. And some of the people are going to say, wow, this is great. Praise to the genius. And there's going to other people start building a crucifix and nailing you to the cross because they don't like to change. So there's always the curse of being an original thinker. And that may be part of what is going on here. There's kind of a bit of a struggle, probably to connect with people, because the previous T-square involves Neptune conjunct Venus squaring Mars and the moon. So there's going to be resistance to connecting to other people. And then we have her intellectual qualities are also kind of making it a bit prickly for her. But the thing to remember here, where are we? Okay. There's a couple of sextiles. And one of the really wonderful things in this chart, which you don't see right away, the sun is sextile the moon. That's almost as good as sun trine moon. And that's an important thing. When the sun and the moon are in harmony with each other, whether by a sextile or a trine, this person has a certain amount of inner confidence, which is wonderful because she's going to need it. There was a bit of a tendency to be, a bit abrasive, a bit sudden, a bit genius oriented, but it's disrupting at the same time. So there's a lot of nice confidence here, but even more important, Venus is also sextiling Pluto, suggesting that she has the ability to read people if she gets that Neptune Venus under control, and help transform and connect to them. So even though she can be a bit abrasive, it isn't quite, as daunting as it might seem otherwise. Also, I didn't accent it here. Let me just know, but she's also got the Mars. Mars is trining the sun, and not so much the sun, but also it's trining Mercury. So there's again a nice connection. This person's somewhat forceful. The problem is, I think, for her to find a way to soften the blows and not be quite as abrasive as she may have been up until now. And I'm not even saying Venus conjunct Neptune. I'm not even saying people will be aware that she's abrasive, because this can really sweeten the diplomacy. It can also make a person delusional about other people, but it can sweeten the diplomacy. So she may seemingly get along with people, and then they just sit there and go, I don't know why, but she just rubs me the wrong way. So she really needs to feel her confidence, and once again, use that Neptune conjunct Venus to find a way to tune into somebody and connect to somebody, as opposed to, and to find a way not to rub them the wrong way. Okay. And I have one more chart here that I'm looking at, and I got through these a little faster than I thought, but this is one I have, and it's from my collection. Forgive me, but I'm very dry. But right off the bat, we sure have a packed first house here. And I want to point out, this is a young person. She's 7 years old as of about 2-3 weeks ago. And right off the bat, the thing I noticed when I'm looking at that bundle up front, Neptune is conjunct the sun within 2 minutes. Mercury is conjunct Mars in about 2-3 minutes, 2-3 degrees. And it's all in Pisces. Mars in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, Sun in Pisces, and Neptune very happy. Let me see. And Neptune also in Pisces. So on one level, I say, hey, this kid's fine, but I'm not sure how much she's living in the physical world, because to me, all that in the first house, even with Venus on the ascendant and maybe the ability to connect to people, she's in this bubble, this very spiritual, intuitive. And look, when you're born, it's my belief that you're kind of half in the other world anyway, until you finally learn to focus here. So she does have the wonderful benefit of Saturn trining both the sun, and by association Neptune, and Mars, and by association Mercury. And I'm not even discussing Chiron, it's in there, it's a part of it, but I'm just dealing with the planets right now. So this is going to help ground her. And ironically, Saturn's even in the 9th house, which is, as I say, kind of a Neptunian Jovian house. So it's very expansive and open. And look, her North Node's up there too. She needs to be very spiritual. She needs to be very open to the universe and open to concepts. But she's got to find a way to connect to the physical world. I've seen charts like this before, and a friend of mine put it this way. She said, people like this only spend half of their time in this world. They spend half of their lives living in the other side, with one foot in the other universe, or the beyond the veil, whatever the thing is you want to call it, that's over there. So but she's got some grounding here. And Uranus is trining the moon, which means she's probably relatively flexible emotionally, not necessarily steady, in the sense that Uranus trining the moon is not consistent. But so why is it a difficult chart? Well, this one became a difficult chart by transit. Her father is an ongoing client of mine. I've been doing his readings about 10-12 years now. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I think around 2017, 2016, he came to me and said he was upset for his daughter. They were claiming that she was probably autistic. She hadn't spoken. She didn't really talk much at all. She would communicate, but she didn't use language necessarily. And he was very, very concerned that he was going to have to put her in a special school. And I will admit I cheated a little bit here, and I called a friend of mine who is a medical astrologer, although I had my suspicions as it was. So what's the suspicion? Neptune is rolling across all of these planets. It's only today, Neptune's at 20 degrees Pisces, or Mercury's at 19. So really, for the first 6 years of her life, Neptune is completely fogging, F-O-G-G-I-N-G, fogging her sun, fogging her Chiron, fogging her Mars, fogging her Mercury, and they're already in Pisces to start with. So I'm sure whatever world she's living in, she's very happy in. And I'm not meaning that in a flippant way. I'm very Neptunian myself. But the outside world, the way the outside world is set up, they're ready to put her into a home or a school for autistic children. And my medical astrologer and I said, no, it's not autism. It's just she's incredibly disconnected from the physical world right now. Speaking may just be too much effort at this point. Now, there's a possibility of wonderful growth and change. And the first thing I told her father's a Virgo, but he's actually very open-minded. And if I've insulted any Virgos, my apologies. But there's a tendency among Virgos to know them as being a bit rule-bound, but he's not as rule-bound. I also notice her sun is trining her Saturn. Mars is all these things are trining her Saturn, and so she gets along really well with your dad. Mom, however, is another story. Right off the bat, Mars, the moon is in Leo. And generally speaking, I'm not saying it's true in every case, I find that people with moon in Leo, particularly women, but men too, have very dominating, borderline narcissistic mothers. Because mom comes through as a Leo figure. It's look at me, I'm what's important here. You're my child. You're not necessarily a separate individual. They kind of can be very imposing. And this is the way it is actually in this family. The mother was very frustrated with the daughter. And I suggested to the father, without making it obvious, he should become an ally to his daughter. I didn't want the mother to feel like he was trying to steal the daughter away or anything funny like that, because I had a feeling that would disturb her greatly. But I did suggest that he should try to communicate with her in any way that he can and make her feel supported, make her feel that even though there are people that might not understand her, he was accepting her the way she was, etc., etc. And that seems to have worked out fairly well, actually. I just recently updated his chart about a month ago, and I did ask about the daughter, and she's doing fairly well. The other thing to note here, though, also talking about the mom and the dad. Come on, here we go. No, wait, that's not the one I wanted. I want to go further. I circled the Mercury, Neptune down there to show how it's finally moving off. That's over there. And what I also want to point out is she has sun quincunx the moon. And this is a bit of a challenge. Mom and dad are not even on the same wavelength, in her opinion. Remember, the moon and sun, the relationship between the sun and the moon show you how the child perceives the parents, not necessarily how the child is. So mom and dad are not on the same wavelength to her. I don't think she connects, and she doesn't connect particularly well with her mom. So again, I was telling him, you've got to connect with her and make sure she's encouraged and supported. Because look, by next year, Neptune's going to be gone, and she'll be more inclined to engage in the world in a loving way. Saturn by transit is actually getting ready to go over her ascendant, which hopefully will start grounding her. And over the next couple of years, because we're in early Saturn, early Aquarius, so the next 3 years, Saturn is going to be rolling through the entire first house. And I'm believing that this is when she'll finally come together. Saturn will kind of talk to Pisces and say, you know what, there's some things you have to do, there's some things you have to pay attention to, and things should work out well. And I also want to point out, we've got Uranus at 8 degrees, getting ready to oppose her natal Saturn by transit. So that may bring a little bit of disruption, but I think the next few years will help bring her into alignment. She's always going to be a bit of for want of a better term, a space cadet and intuitive. But as long as she's guided and trusts it and knows what she's doing, she'll be fine. I wouldn't be surprised if she became a professional psychic. I wouldn't be surprised if she got deeply involved in some kind of intuitive something, whether it's music or art or whatever it might be. You know, remember her North Node is up in that 9th house. So the goal is still to keep heading further, as Ken Kesey used to put on his bus back in the 60s. Further was the destination, and further is where this young lady will continue to go. And okay, I did that. Okay. So those are the charts I basically had. And I do want to point out, a lot of people were very kind to volunteer their charts, and I appreciate that. I would like to say, if you're going to offer your chart to an astrologer to be looked at, I understand if you want to cross your name off of it, but if you cross off the birth data, you kind of tie our hands, because that's what we work with. As much as I respect my clients, if they bring me a chart, I'm going to cast my own chart, because this is how I do what I do. And without the birth information, and somebody wants advice, I can't do secondary progressions, I can't do solar arc directions, I can't do solar returns, and I can't do astrocartography if I don't have the birth information. Yes, sometimes you can work backwards and kind of figure out where they were born and stuff, but it's a lot of extra work. So if you are volunteering or requesting help from an astrologer, don't give us this, okay? Somebody sent this in, and I mean, it's mind-boggling. He or she is including everything that she could find at astro.com. And I don't know about you, but I look at this and I'm like, I can't read this. Even if it was clear, I know this is a bad low-res picture, but this is insane. So if you're going to, let's get back to something nice looking. If you're going to request help from any astrologer, even on a forum like this, please give us the birth information. Just sending us a chart, I can't trust it. I don't know what you know about astrology, and I don't know if you're going to include every planet and asteroid and object in the sky or not. So birth time is what we could really use. So that is basically the charts I expected to go through. It happened a little faster than I thought, but I'm open to any questions anybody has. We can go over comments I made on charts. I did breeze through these a bit. Of course, every chart could go into a little deeper. But let me have it if you got any questions.
So, Anthony, this is Jen Baptist. I was one of the ones that shared a cluster image, because I do have a bit of a complicated chart. I had it that if it all appealed to you, that you would have asked people for their details, and I did, and I would have gladly have provided it. So that was just something that hopefully is it sounds like you did it, because you said
no, I did ask for birth details when I needed them, but I just think it's sometimes funny when I get a chart like that. I'm just sort of like, it's like, whoa, it looks like a bruise. I can't even begin to read it. So I'm not judging, even though I'm a Capricorn, I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying, ideally, birth data is better than a chart. But and if I didn't get to your chart, I'm sorry. There's only so much I can do in an hour for difficult charts. But
understood. That was just something I wanted to clarify. So thanks.
Okay. Anybody else with any other questions?
Anthony, this is Sue. I have just kind of a general question. It seems like what you were saying was that to mitigate the T-squares and grand crosses, you look at the trines and the sextiles.
If at all possible, yes.
Yeah, if there are any.
A couple of those charts barely had anything in them, and the young man had like a grand cross and a T-square, and I think like in 2 trines. So it's kind of like you're trying to hold up a 50-story building with like a couple of 2x4s, but wow, they can be worked with. The wonderful benefit of hard aspects is they do generate a lot of energy, and if you do learn to master them, it gives you a lot of power. I mean, in my own chart, I have a T-square with 5 planets, and 2 of them are Uranus and Neptune. So I'm a bit fuzzy as a Capricorn, and I have Pluto square the moon, but I have Sun trine moon, and I have Saturn and Mars conjunct trining Uranus. And I always say, when you see a T-square something, look for the escape route. Okay, look for the way out, and the way out is you try to send people to the parts in their chart that are strong and flow naturally. And sometimes, in the case of that young man with all the squares, in his case, he's really going to have to tap into transits, because so much of it is a challenge that as he goes through life. And of course, he had Sun. Let's see if I can pop that one up real quick. He did have Sun. Here we go. He did have Sun trining Pluto, so he's got the possibility of transformation. But he's his entire life, in my perception of it, is going to be a work in progress. And you know, and ideally, if he does it right, it'll become stronger, and he'll be reborn, and he'll be capable of amazing stuff. You know, when you see grand crosses and things, you know, when you see people who are, and I use this term loosely, successful in whatever that means to you, or are, you know, famous in some way, shape, or form, they often have a lot of squares and oppositions in their chart because they're driven. And ideally, they learn to master them in a positive way. But if not, we know many famous celebrities that are basically sons of bitches and will stop at everybody in their path. And this is somebody, to me, that has not mastered their squares, but has just used them as battering rams, you know. But most people that are famous actually have, and successful, whatever that means, do have difficult charts because they're driven. You know, with a difficult chart, you can't just sit there and go, hey, everything's fine. You know, I actually had a client very early on in my career. He had like a couple of grand trines and sextiles, and he was the mellowest guy I ever met in my life. And everything just was fine in his life. You go, how you doing? Fine. And I bumped into him about 25 years later, and guess what? Everything was fine. And he had a couple of kids, and the kids were fine, and life was good. So he was very blessed. He certainly was not driven, but he was a happy man. So I'm not in any way putting him down, but he was not a driven man, and he didn't need to be. So I see squares and oppositions as kind of it's the P for the princess under all the mattresses, I guess. It's that sensitivity that just, it irritates you. You got to do something about it, you know. You can't just sit there, you know.
I have one more kind of question kind of along those lines. So, and then if you have someone that has a really small cluster, you know, that like that, all that Neptune that one young woman had, or, you know, somebody else that has, you know, just a few, just one really concentrated place, then how do you break out of that? If you have, would that again be looking to?
Well, here's the other one. That was the Neptune one is up, and then there's this one, which is the first one I did. Well, the first thing, guaranteed, these people are going to be obsessive. By the way, I think Bob Dylan has like 5 planets in his 5th house of creative self-expression. If you ever heard of R. Crumb, the underground cartoonist, I think he's got like 5 planets in Virgo all conjunct, and he's a compulsive artist. He's a guy that he's just sitting there and he's drawing all the time. So there's going to be something compulsive about these people. And I think what the job is, I mean, transits will help, but you really have to look at what's in that pile. You know, in this particular case I have up right here, it's all intensely Scorpio, and it's kind of about power and control. So this person, in my personal opinion, will probably end up a major political figure. I don't think she's necessarily going to be in office, but she'll be one of the people involved in handling power. She's still young. She hasn't got to her Saturn return yet. But when you see Sun conjunct Pluto, and down at the heart of who she is, squaring a Saturn, and this kind of wonderfully unctuous quality to be able to speak with a silver tongue. It practically says politics, the ability to lie and get stuff done at the same time. And what is it they say about diplomat? A truly diplomatic person can tell you to go to hell in such a way that you're looking forward to the trip. And this woman has that. So if I were talking to her, I'd say you've got a lot of power, but you've got to learn how to use it in a healthy way. But she's going to want to use it. So you can't deny a big cluster like that, but you want to find what's the best thing that this can manifest as. In the case of the young girl, I wouldn't send her to bookkeeping school, okay? Or it's just not going to function for her because she's just not a left brain person. Let's get back down to her. There we go. This is not a left brain person. You've got 5 planets in Chiron in Pisces, well, 4 because Venus is kind of off a little bit, but I wouldn't tell her, I wouldn't put her in accounting school. I'd send her to some kind of spiritual direction, whatever that means. It could be a yoga teacher, it could be a musician, it could be, if you're more traditional, you could get into the religious roles like nuns or charity or whatever it might be. Not that think that's a great direction, but I'm saying this person is only half in this world, so you're definitely gonna have to find a way for her to balance it, and for her to recognize that with all this bundle, she's got a lot of power connecting to the other side. So use that, don't try to be an accountant. Don't try to be an engineer. It may not be as difficult. Everybody's chart, we can't all be the same. And that's sometimes the trouble with some charts. People like have to be, just have they are, and like this chart and the other chart with that cluster, or R. Crumb, Relentless Drawer, Bob Dylan, just creatively over the top. I mean, he's put out, I think, his like 45th album or something recently, over the course of his years, and has now been releasing dozens of outtake albums of songs that he didn't release, and it was all in the 5th house. So he's just pouring, and it's all in Gemini. He's pouring stuff out creatively, So he found the solution for his chart. So that's the way I kind of look at bundles like that. Find what's good in that bundle. Find where the strength is in that bundle and aim it a little better, maybe, is one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I would think that the progressions would kind of give an indication of what that direction would be as well. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. I think progressions would show you where that bundle's going. And I mean, in this chart in particular, it's up right now. Neptune's not going to move that much by progressions, but Mars and Mercury and actually bring it up, it's going to all move into Aries in probably the first 30 years of her life. So that could actually make her very forward for a very intuitive person. Because she's still going to be the Pisces, but it's going to have that Aries undercurrent. Yeah, progressions would be a great way to look for a bundle, because that's when the bundle starts breaking up, by progressions.
I have a question about, I think it was the second chart with the Saturn opposition, the sun.
Okay, 1 second. And I don't know why, but please speak up a little bit. I can hear you, but it's very, very low.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. So this chart, okay.
Yeah, with Saturn being the chart ruler and opposing the sun and the Mercury, what would be your advice about a remedy just for that alone, being that Saturn is such an important part of the chart and it's opposing the sun?
Well, this is where I felt very much that the intuitive side was very important, because Saturn opposite the sun and Mercury are going to give you a certain lack of self-esteem, probably. You're always going to be concerned about how the outside world is judging you. And as a result, the one thing that helps Saturn is you've always got to do your homework. As long as you do your homework and do what needs to be done, whatever that means, Saturn will reward you. But in an opposition position, the person whose chart this is may constantly feel Saturn glaring at them. Like, this isn't enough. You haven't been good enough. So that's one of the reasons in this particular chart I said the Neptune moon sextiling Jupiter and Uranus is a wonderful opportunity as a remedy to this, because when you really get spiritual, everything becomes much clearer. You're not following rules that limit you. So in a way of speaking, what's the old Zen statement is like, before I was enlightened, I chopped wood and I carried water. And then I became enlightened and I went back to chopping wood and carrying water. The realization that what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing. That's the meaning of enlightenment. Do what you've got to do. And it would probably, that's why I said the spiritual side, if she develops it, will soften that glaring Saturn that's staring at her from across the chart. And ideally, I would like to turn her resistance. The Saturn makes her resist expressing herself, probably with it opposite her Mercury. I would like to see her embrace the Saturn and realize that to please Saturn, it's in the house of communications. Precise, focused communications is what she needs to do. Now, right now, I believe to a certain degree, this person may be very hesitant to express anything. Because you've also got that moon in Virgo on top of the Capricorn and Saturn in the opposition, kind of making her a bit hesitant. Now, she shouldn't have too much trouble making Saturn happy, because Mars is in Virgo, and Virgo is a hard worker when it's in Mars. So she's got the ability to please Saturn. To me, the biggest issue in this chart is her belief that she doesn't quite measure up. And in order to, and with an opposition like that, you could do the labors of Hercules and you're still not going to believe you measure up, because that Saturn's kind of always bugging you. And I see the need to embrace the spiritual side, where you kind of, ideally you say, I'm fine the way I am. I can be better, but this is okay the way I am. There's nothing wrong with me right now, but I can still grow. Because right now there may be a part of her sitting there going, I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. And there's nothing wrong with her, but she believes that. So you want to find a way of, a form of acceptance. And that's why I'm saying Saturn, the spiritual side would help her become more accepting and understanding of the bigger picture, as opposed to that Virgo and Saturn kind of, these are the rules and we've drawn a square here and this is where we belong, kind of equality. I hope that made some sense.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So I had a question about the statement that you made that the sun and the moon are the parental figures in a chart. What does it kind of sum up if the sun and the moon are in the same sign?
Usually they see the sun, well, if the mom and dad, I can speak English, I promise you. Mom and dad are seen as very similar, not necessarily that different. Of course, it depends what aspects are going on. If it's conjunct, mom and dad are kind of one to them. If, one is at like 2 degrees and the other is at like 15 degrees, and the 15-degree one is squaring, or there's going to be a bit more going on there. But I mean, a very quickly anecdotal story. I have 2 older brothers. I have sun trine moon. The middle brother has sun square moon. The oldest brother has sun conjunct moon. And I saw my parents as very loving. And although they were alcoholics, they were very supportive of me. And they did their best, except they drank too much. My middle brother with sun square moon saw mom and dad as just at each other all the time and not cooperating. And he couldn't seem to get his emotions and his, like, one parent would only half satisfy him, the other parent would only, so he always struggled, which sun square moon anyway, struggling with the inner and outer world anyhow. And my oldest brother, mom and dad were a unit to him. He didn't really see any difference between them. And so it's kind of funny. It's really how the person perceives the parent, not necessarily how they are. Because my brothers and I, we did all have the same parents physically, but we perceive them all very differently. So
Thank
does
you,
that-
'cause-
okay, you're
yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, because the sun in this circumstance has that it's conjunct the south node and the black moon. And then and it's at like 27 degrees, but then the moon is at 1 degree and it's isolated. And yeah, okay, got it.
If the moon,
I think you,
yeah, if
ahead.
the moon's isolated, it's probably a little harder to draw it into the rest of the chart. Just a general statement, when I see a chart with very few aspects, the other planets are still in the chart. So it's not like you can't reach them, but it's almost, it's like there's a house that's been built and some of the rooms don't have doors on them, or maybe the doors are locked but they're still part of the entire house. So that's what I want to say. When a planet may not be aspected, like in this particular chart in front of us, the Venus, the moon is just floating around there by itself, but it's still there. And actually you can kind of drag it into Mars. You can kind of drag it into Pluto, but it's kind of hanging out there on its own, but it's still in the chart. It's still there. So,
yeah,
it's not-
I meant in the sign itself. Yeah, the moon itself in this instance has a trine to Pluto, which
Oh.
is in a T-square to the nodes, which of course then the sun is conjunct the south node. So I think there's a big story. There's a fair interplay there.
yeah, there definitely is in that one, the one you're talking
Yeah.
about, sure. Anyone else? Ultimately, just as a general statement, and you can interrupt me at any point, there's always a solution to any chart. Some easier than others. Some people will struggle with their chart a lot of their lives. They'll slip back, they'll move forward. I honestly think that younger guy in his 20s with those grand crosses and T-squares, he's going to struggle a bit more than most of us. I do believe that if he struggles well with it, he's going to continually feel better about his life and he'll be able to handle it better. But to the day you die, you've always got to watch your squares. You've got to be aware of them, or they might misfire. So, but once you get aware of them, you're capable of tremendous energy. So, and that's all I can think of at the moment.
Okay, thank you so much, Anthony. That was fantastic. Would everyone now
pleasure.
please unmute and let's all thank Anthony Picco.
Thanks,
Thank
Anthony.
you, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
my pleasure. Always enjoy doing this.